Habits control our lives, whether we realise it or not. Between 40 to 50% of the actions we do every single day aren't actual decisions we make, but habits. My name is Ash Porter and welcome to the channel. In this video, we're going to be looking at what exactly are habits, how can we take back control in our lives, and how can we form quality new habits and get rid of those old destructive ones. Everything covered in this video will come from two incredibly important books. The first one, The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, and the second one, Atomic Habits by James Clear. These are phenomenal books all about habits, and if you want to dive deeper into this topic and learn from absolute experts, I cannot recommend these books enough. And if you're wondering, which one should I read? I say both. If you feel up to it, absolutely both. But if you were to pick one, I'll just give you a brief summary. The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. This is way more scientific, researchy. It basically looks at what exactly are habits from that scientific kind of view. It has so many case studies like exemplifying exactly how habits play out in our lives and affect so many different areas. It's really worth a read, but even though this one's way more sciencey and researchy, it still has really good practical advice in it. And then Atomic Habits by James Clear. This one is probably now the more famous one and more widely renowned as being incredibly practical, incredibly hands-on. And this is a book which I think anyone and everyone should read. This is the book that can help you change your life, change your habits, and get rid of old bad ones as well. And so, yeah, this one also has, good science in it. It's not just James Clear talking out of his arse. There is good research and science behind this, but that would be my summary. Way more practical, way more sort of sciencey, intellectual, but together they're a beautiful combination. So go pick up a copy of these books, go read them, but don't stop watching this video because I hope this is still going to be helpful. Also, if you're more of a reader and you gain knowledge and learn better by reading something, I've also written a blog covering this exact topic for those of you who maybe don't get as much out of a YouTube video. And so the link to that will be in the description. You can also, if you want, check out my other blogs at the same time. If you hadn't guessed already, habits are pretty important. They make up a huge chunk of the actions and decisions that we make each day, yet most of the time we aren't even aware of them. Our brain is making decisions automatically for us that we don't even get the chance to think about. Some examples of this is maybe every time you put on a pair of shoes, you put on the left shoe first. Maybe any time you have an argument, you get naturally very defensive and you're not good in that environment. Or maybe if you're a bit like me, some of the times when you're anxious or nervous, you tend to bite your nails a lot. Those are just a few examples of what habits are, but I'm telling you, the list is literally endless. But I guess even knowing what some examples are, the question still arises, what exactly are habits? Habits, some great, some small, are routines that have literally been written and coded into our brain, just like in the same way you put code into a computer. And this piece of brain, which takes all that code, is called the basal ganglia. I'm proud of myself knowing something scientific like that. Every time we perform an action for the first time or are still learning to do it, our brain is looking for a way to take less strain off itself and to make these processes more automatic and easier. When you do something for the first time, we all know that it can be really hard, but the more we do it, the easier and easier it becomes. And that is the brain writing the code into the basal ganglia, allowing that process to become more and more automatic, using less and less brain power. This allows our brain to focus on other new things while we continue doing old tasks which we've done a million times. You know, right from birth as a baby, you're learning what you can touch, what you can't touch, where you can go, where you can't go. You're learning how to walk, how to eat, how to do all these different things. We are constantly learning right from birth, and that's exactly what is happening in our basal ganglia. It is writing down this code, remembering this is how we do it. But the craziest and almost scariest thing about habits, right, is that once they're written into our brain, once that piece of code has been written, it is there forever. Yes, you heard me. Forever. You cannot get rid of it. And that's why destructive habits, things like addictions, can cause a whole lifetime of pain, because these habits, once they are written into our brain, are so hard to get rid of. However, there is hope in this. Habits, although they can't be fully erased, they can be written over the top of enough times that they become the bottom of the pile and that another habit takes its place instead. You know, habits can be our best friends or our worst enemies. At their best, they can help us thrive, become the best versions of ourselves. You know, all successful people, present and past, whether they realise it or not, have probably had incredibly good habits, routines in which they regularly perform, automatically perform to help them get to where they have been or are right now. At their worst though, habits can be insanely destructive. When left unchecked and unmanaged, they can lead to incredibly bad addictions which can ruin literally our whole lives. And the final thing in this is whether habits are building us up or wiping our feet out from under us. Habits compound over time. Habits take effect, and the more you do something, it's going to compound and add up and add up. So if you've got a quality habit which is helping you grow, it's going to compound and grow and grow and grow over time. Whereas if you've got something destructive going on, that equally is going to compound and get worse and worse and worse. And I don't know about you, but when I hear this stuff, there's only one thing I want to do, and that is learn to take back control for myself. And to do this, there are two key concepts we need to learn before we can jump into the practicalities of changing old habits and forming new ones. So first up, the habit loop. Now, the habit loop can be found in many places, but I first learned about it in Charles Duhigg's The Power of Habit. His version of it is very easy to understand, and it's going to come up on the screen now. As you can see, the habit loop has four key components. It has the cue, the routine, the reward, and the craving. Put simply, the cue, this is like the trigger, the thing that kick-starts the habit. This could be something visual that you see, a smell in which you smell, a taste, someone saying something to you, or it can be an environment you're in. A cue or the trigger can be so many different things, but it's that thing that kickstarts the cycle. Now, the action or the routine, this is pretty simple. It's what you would really call as the habit. It's the thing you're doing. It's the biting your nails. It's the getting defensive in an argument. It's the tying your left shoe first. The reward. Now, this may not always be obvious because you may think, wait, I don't tie my left shoe first to get a reward, but every habit has a reward at the end of it. There's a reason we're doing it. You know, sometimes it's obvious. Biting your nails, what could that be? It's the physical sensation or the distraction away from the environment that you're in. It's distracting you, it's giving you something physical, tangible to feel and get hold of. Or for example, why would you tie your left shoe first? Maybe that's a habit you've just done your whole life and you've got used to. However, the reward is that you've got your shoe on, that you can go outside without getting stones stuck in your feet, all that kind of stuff. It's allowing you to go outside and adventure. And then the final part of the habit loop, which for me is pretty much the key component and what I would describe as the central cog which drives the whole process, and that is the craving. Now, the craving is simple. It's the motivation behind the habit. It's the craving for the reward, right? The thing that really drives us fit. Your habit may be that every day when you get home from work, you go home, you open one of your food cupboards and you pull out a chocolate bar and eat it. And now you're wondering, okay, why am I doing this? And there could be a number of reasons. The thing is, there can be multiple cravings. So that craving could be you're craving the sugar, the dopamine here that comes from having that sugar. Or it could be you're craving, you're just hungry, you know? At the end of the day, that's a basic human emotion and craving is you're hungry and you need, at the end of your workday, you feel like you need a bit of a boost. So cravings can be anything, but really they're rooted in humans' basic needs and desires. But obviously they can split off and channel themselves into many different things. But the key thing to remember here is it works as a loop. You can't be missing one of these four things. And it's also important to note, both the craving and the cue, they can have multiple things. The same action, habit, routine can be linked with multiple different cues and multiple different cravings. Now, this can be really useful when it comes to making new habits, but also really hard when it comes to breaking those old ones. And then the second key concept, this one comes from Atomic Habits and James Clear, and this is called the laws of habits. Now this is pretty simple. Do you want to make a new quality habit? Well, the 4 rules of new habit making is make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. Do you want to stop an old bad habit? Well, there's 4 rules for this as well. Make it invisible, unattractive, difficult, and unsatisfying. Both these concepts are so core in habit building. If you haven't already, pause the video, write this stuff down because it is so essential if you want to go on and build quality new habits and change your old ones. I hope you wrote it down. Now finally, before we jump into the really practical part of how to actually form new habits and change old ones and some of my top tips, I want to share one final concept which I think is so important for habit formation. Again, this comes from James Clear in Atomic Habits, but he talks all about identity. When it comes to habit making, right, and when we think about habits, so often it can be completely goal driven. So let's say you've just started working out, you've just started going to the gym, and you set yourself a ton of goals like I want to be able to do 20 pull-ups in a row, I want to be able to bench press this amount, I want to be able to squat this amount, whatever. It's incredibly goal orientated. Now, hear me out. Goals are really good. There is nothing wrong with goals. However, goals are limited. You either fail or you achieve them. And when you achieve them, you're kind of left there and you're like, oh, I need to make some new goals. And actually what can happen is you can end up getting burnt out. You can end up getting bored, endlessly chasing goal after goal after goal. However, what James Clear talks about how is actually when it comes to habit and making and changing and just the general formation of them, focusing on your identity is way more important and a way better motivator. If you're focusing on the fact that I want to be a healthy person, I want to be someone who regularly works out, I want to be someone who when people look at me, they see someone who is in good shape and looks after themselves, that, because you're making it part of your identity, is way more of a motivator. It's going to draw you back to the gym again and again, way more than setting specific goals. You know, set goals, but let your real motivator, the thing that drives you and helps you form and decide what habits are you forming, what are you changing, let it be your identity. Focus on who you are right now, who you aspire to be, and the trajectory you are on who you are becoming. Our identity matters, and that can be so important for helping us form quality habits. Now, it's time to get practical. It's time to look exactly how to start forming new habits and changing old ones, and my top tips to help you along the way. And so the first place I think you have got to start when it comes to habit formation is write it down. Write 4 key things down. What is the habit? Where are you going to be performing this habit? When are you going to be performing this habit? And why are you going to be performing? Having those 4 things, one, it helps us think about what are you actually trying to achieve, but also it gives you it really practically in front of you because it's going to help you then do the next step, which is filling in the habit loop. You know, the when and the where, they can so easily be cues. You can build up more cues, you can build up visual cues, audio cues, whatever, but having a specific when and where is just two easy cues to help you start building or changing a habit. Thinking about what's the reason you want to do it? What are you craving? Is it that you want to start reading more because you want to become smarter? Is it because you want to start reading more because you want to compete with your friends? Is it that you want to start reading more because you want to get into escapism and get into quality fiction and have those moments where you can escape from your surroundings? Work out what is your craving, and then you can feed and fix the reward to make sure it is meeting that craving. You know, also while you're doing this, don't just think about the habit loop, but be writing down the laws of habits. Think about, how are you making it easy? How are you making it satisfying? Like, what are you physically doing? Are you making sure that reward is really satisfying? Are you trying to set up multiple cues throughout the day? You know, are you leaving your running gear out the night before? Are you setting yourself an alarm ready so you get up on time so that you can go running? Are you getting an accountability partner to go running with? These are all cues that you can be building to make your process easier. And when it comes to changing old habits, you'll write down the old habit, write down what you think the cue, the habit, the reward and the craving is, and start shifting those cues. You know, what are the laws of habits? Make it invisible. Easiest step to stopping an old habit and maybe changing it. Make the old cues invisible while you build in new cues and new rewards. If you are a snacker like me, empty your cupboards. Make sure you only buy enough food for your main meals. That makes it so much easier for yourself rather than having to rely on self-control and not giving in to temptation. So that's the first tip. Write it all down. Now, step number 2 is similar to 1, but slightly different. There's a tweak to it, and that it's simply make a plan. So you've started writing it all down, but make a plan, because there is clear research that shows why this works. So the first example is in The Power of Habit. There's this story that Duhigg shares about these old people, I think in Scotland, who have just had hip and knee replacements, right? And they do this study of all the people recovering, learning to walk again and building up their strength. And they find really clearly in the research that those people who made a really clear plan of action over the next few weeks, exactly when they're going to exercise, at what points they're going to stop, how they're going to help themselves, they succeeded. They recovered so much faster than the people who made no plan and just kind of did it however they wanted to. Making a plan works. But also in Atomic Habits, James Clear comes up or talks about this really interesting concept about basically disciplined people, or people you perceive as really disciplined, don't necessarily have incredible willpower and self-control. Actually, what they've done is they've made a plan and they have adjusted and changed their environment to make their habits and their life as easy as possible for themselves. It's going back to that, write it down, you know, controlling your environment, removing those cues. And to do that, you have got to make a plan. You know, you don't have to have incredible willpower or self-control. You just have to be disciplined enough to write it down, make a plan, and then put that into action. Tip number 3, be patient and stick with it. Building new habits and changing old habits take time, but also the results we get from these quality habits, they often take time to see. When it comes to habits, right, so often it's just generally spoken about, people talk about this idea of 30 days. It takes 30 days to build a new habit or 30 days to break an old habit. And people have really good intentions when it comes to this. This is what I used to think before I really started doing some research into it, and that's totally okay. However, from what I understand, that probably just isn't the case. It's more of an average. The reality is, every habit is unique, mainly because 1, every habit is unique, and 2, every person is unique. So one habit, let's say 2 people are trying to build the same habit, just because of their innate abilities, personalities, genetics, it might take person A 30 days to form this new habit, but actually person B, it might take 60. It just might take them a little bit longer. But then if they were building completely different habits, person B might be able to build that habit in a matter of days, whereas person A might take weeks and weeks and weeks. Every habit is unique, but also Clear talks about this really interesting and core concept that actually it's not about the time scale, it's about the frequency of repetition. When it comes to building habits, it's not all about doing it over a certain set of time, it's about how many times you do it. You don't just suddenly learn something because 30 days have passed, but you have to continuously do it again and again and again, and it's that repetition that is building the habit, that is writing it into your basal ganglia, not the series of time. So when it comes to habit building, focus on frequency over time. And equally important, we talked about the compounding effect earlier. When it comes to often the results of habits, most of the time the reason we want to build habits is to have a positive impact on our life, is to see successes and wins. And the reality is, so often it takes a long time to see the consequences, whether it's working out, whether it's writing every day so that you become a better author, whatever it is, you need to let the compounding effect take its place. You're not going to see instant results most of the time, but actually the results that are far off, that take time to get, they're going to be worth it. So tip number 3, remember, have patience and stick with it. Tip number 4, and it is part of the rules and laws of habits, is make it enjoyable. When you hear about habits, I think sometimes people can think of it as boring or really restricting on my life, or, I'm a free spirit, I don't want to have habits. The reality is, whether you like it or not, you have habits which control 40 to 50% of your day. Please, take control of it for yourself, but make fun out of it. Life isn't meant to be boring. Life isn't meant to be constricted. It's meant to be fun and to be enjoyed. And habits can actually help that. Habits should be fun with incredible rewards at the end which drive you towards it. And if they're not, I'm going to say you're doing it wrong. Remember, we're all unique. And so you've got to tailor your habits to yourself. Just because someone else does one habit the way he does it, doesn't mean you have to do it that way too. Just because someone works out 6 times a week in a really particular way, doesn't mean you have to copy them. You can change it, snip it, make it yours, make it unique, make it fun for you. Just because it's fun for someone else doesn't mean it's going to be fun and satisfying for you. Tip number 4, make it fun. Habits are meant to complement and help and make us our better selves. They're not meant to be boring and constrictive. Also, tracking stuff can be really fun. Like in Atomic Habits, Clear talks about this one person who, I can't remember what exactly the habit was, but the way they used to do it is they used to have like 2 jars. One would contain a load of paper clips, I think like 100 paper clips, and the other would be empty. And every time they did this habit, they'd pick and transfer over a paper clip. And so they visually would track and see how many times they were doing their habit. And I know for me, anything I'm doing, I love to see visual measurements. I love to have that satisfaction, whether it's a list. I love working for a list. I know that for my daily routines and habits, ticking off saying I've done it is really, really good. So you need to find ways that make your habits stimulating, fun, satisfying for you. Tip number 5, don't get caught up in the numbers. Now for this, I'm going to cheat and I'm just going to read you a quote straight from Atomic Habits because I just could not say it any better or do it justice. So, this pitfall is evident in many areas of life. We focus on working long hours instead of getting meaningful work done. We care more about getting 10,000 steps than we do about being healthy. We teach for standardized tests instead of emphasizing learning, curiosity, and critical thinking. In short, we optimize for what we measure. When we choose the wrong measurement, we get the wrong behavior. This is sometimes referred to as Goodhart's law, named after the economist Charles Goodhart. The principle states, when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. Measurement is only useful when it guides you and it adds context to a large picture, not when it consumes you. Each number is simply one piece of feedback in the overall system. And then my final tip for habit building and habit formation is embrace failure. The reality is, right, we're all human. Believe it or not, none of us are perfect. And so we're all prone to make mistakes, to make errors, and to fail at things. And habits are exactly the same. Talk to any successful person. They will have failure being a huge part of their story. Because, you know, failure in itself isn't bad. It doesn't define you and your future. It's actually how we respond to failure. One piece of advice from Atomic Habits, which I really like, is the 2-day rule or the twice rule. Can't remember exactly what it's called, but basically never miss a habit twice. When you're trying to build a habit, when you're doing your daily morning reading, for example, don't miss 2 days in a row. You know, we all miss days here and there. Life gets on top of us. You're too tired to get up. You forget, you give in to temptation, whatever it is, we all do that. But never do it twice in a row, because then that itself starts becoming a habit. But equally, you know, I know there are plenty of things. For literally about 2 years now, I've been trying to build a great habit of working out and running. And I keep getting injured, or keep getting distracted, or things keep getting in the way. And for 2 years, I just haven't been able to get it like nailed yet. I'm still working on it. And the reality is, we all fail. We're all gonna miss 2 days in a row. I miss that all the time. But the reaction is, are we gonna give up? Are we just say, oh, I just can't do it and give up? Because actually, doing it infrequently is better than not doing it at all. It's still starting to build that habit. It's still overcoming that failure. So we all fail. Embrace it. Learn from it. Grow from it. Just go again and don't give up. And there we go, guys. I hope now, after learning all that and going through those tips, that you now know how to build a new habit, how to change an old one, and how to equip yourself and give yourself the best chance of succeeding. Even more importantly, I hope you now know how to take a little bit more control in your life over your habits, over that 40 to 50% of your daily actions. If you want to know more, as I've said, check out these 2 books. They are phenomenal, they are worth your time, and they complement each other so well. And I really hope this video was enjoyable and useful for you. If it was, please consider dropping a like, subscribing to my channel, sharing it with a friend who you may think this could be useful for. I'd really appreciate it. I've been Ash Porter. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.